Oh, hello there, viewing audience. My name's host Eric. I'm the host of an internet program called Talking with Famous People. And I'm here today to explain why we should treat our claims like trash. What? Treat our claims like trash, Eric? Why? Surely you don't mean that. Well, actually, I do mean that. In the sense that we separate our trash. We sometimes, if we're feeling like it. We'll put the recyclables in one bin, and we'll put the yard waste in another bin, and we'll put the landfill destined trash into a third bin. Well, we should separate our claims like that as well. So it's like what's perfectly acceptable in one context as a claim is not acceptable in another context as a claim. And the biggest problem isn't that the claims that people make are bad claims or that people don't like, as I always typically say, you're thinking badly. It's not necessarily that they're thinking badly. It's just that they're failing to do what I just said. Separate their claims into different bins. What kind of claim is this that I'm making? And different kinds of claims require different kinds of substantiation. So if you're making a claim that's about a personal matter, then it's appropriately substantiated through meow, meow, meow. If you're making a claim about a normative matter, it's appropriately substantiated through meow, meow, meow. So the problem I have with ESFPs, I've decided, is basically they don't separate their trash. So it's like it's fine for somebody to make certain kinds of claims, provided they add the framing. This is subjectively so for me, for my own purposes. It's when they try to universalize trash that doesn't belong in the universal bin, for example, or they try to subjectify trash that doesn't belong in the subjective bin. That's where problems arise. So it's not so much that they're wrong, as that they haven't separated their trash. Hi, Tremor. Hi, Winston's mom. Thank you about my commenting on my community post there. I was surprised to see next to the weed store there's a dentist office, the Dew family. 3 of them, 3 family members from the Dew family, all collaborating together as dentists in this one dentist office. And so I said, physical. We should treat it like physical trash. That's a good question. The answer being, people need to separate their claims into different kinds of bins, right? So if I'm making a claim about myself, it's one kind of claim. If I'm making a claim about what's universally true, it's another kind of claim. If I'm making a prescriptive claim about what you should do, that's another kind of claim. Hello, TWFP world, said like Liza Minnelli. Hello, world. I can't really do Liza Minnelli's voice. Rachel does it well. So the basic principle here is we should treat our claims like trash, and that we should separate them into what kind of claim they are, just like we separate our trash. And the biggest problem I'm trying to sort of reconcile in my head as a sort of a big frame issue right now is what to do about TI polar. How can I both coexist in a world with TI polar, encounter it fairly frequently, have it be what it is, and both appropriately reject it, yet concurrently not demonize those people, I don't want to have a type that I'm always talking shit about. It's really challenging not to when people come in, make the same mistakes over and over again. They're all representative of one of two types. What is that icon email anthrax? Is that aluminum foil folded to put a potato in to barbecue?
It's him.
Oh.
You know how he always is in that hoodie and he always has his face blacked out?
Oh. Yeah, I actually knew that. I was just joking.
Oh.
I was trying to think, what could I pretend like his hoodie looks like it's not a hoodie since somebody commented upon it.
An envelope opening?
No, well, I said it looks kind of like aluminum foil folded to be ready to put a baked potato into.
Yeah.
On the barbecue. Unfortunately, it looks so much like a hoodie. It's hard to come up with other things that it looks like to make a joke about, you know. You did receive something, and she did receive something in the mail today. I don't think it was from you, though. No, it was food from her family. So I said, "Is that lasagna?" Because it came in like a lasagna tray, but it was Rice Krispies treats. That's what it was. I had a couple of them. No, I know. The thing is, it's not just ESFPs, and it's not just trolling. So the thing is, it's like ESFPs don't start out trolling, but the way they are is perceived as trolly because it's just that like frustratingly TI polar, you know. I think after a little while they get frustrated by being how they are.
Indeed, we do have a package.
Oh, looks like Rachel got a present from Winston's mom.
Yeah, thank you, Winston's mom. Do you mind
want to do
an
opening thing? Sure, let's do it.
Yeah, they're homemade. My Aunt Sherry is known for her Rice Krispie treats. I was the one who started them, like getting them for my birthday and stuff, and then the rest of the family, like now they do it too. Okay.
I'll address that in a second, leaf trimmer.
Ooh.
What is it?
Lollipops. Narwhal lollipops.
Narwhal lollipops. Wow, cool. Thanks,
That is
Winston.
cool.
Mom.
Thank you. And eyeliner. That's so cool. Thank you. I actually was just thinking about how I need a new eyeliner because my felt pen one is starting to dry out.
And you know, just the other day, I was thinking about how one problem with Rachel is that her eyes have too few lines. So that's great that we got eyeliner because that'll help address that problem by adding more lines to her eyes. Okay, so the thing is, I'm not sure that really. I've had some people come in and be malicious, but I don't think those people who are openly just spitefully malicious necessarily correlate with ESFPs. I think ESFPs don't come in trying to be trolly necessarily in general, and they don't. When they end up trying to be trolly, it's still not really malicious. It's the acting out of a child who can't get any kind of good attention. And the reason they can't get any kind of good attention is because they're in the wrong environment. So if you are in a place with a lot of feral cats and you are a mouse, you are in the wrong environment. And if you are compelled to live there for a long period of time and somehow survive it, you will find yourself very ontologically frustrated, you know? People who find themselves returning to places where they naturally face resistance because of whatever circumstances, it's gonna result in conflict at some point.
Oh, That's so cute. So it's a double eyeliner because the tip is felt pen, and then the other side is a stamp. So I have a stamp of my.
I'm looking forward to the day when Rachel's face is nothing but eyes and lines around her eyes. Rick Rodriguez says, does our MBTI type change over time, or is it something natural? And does environment and experience impact the impact within our MBTI? Well, the answer to that is no, it doesn't change over time. It's something natural. Well, it's the inevitable consequence of not being able to have everything. So, for example, it's perhaps best understood through intertype relations. So Rachel and I are compatible in certain ways and less compatible in other ways, right? So for example, our compatibility on intuition grounds is a 1-5 kind of compatibility, which is to say I value and rely on and assume myself good enough at introverted intuition that I can extrovertedly intuit consciously. And the opposite is true for her. Given that introverted intuition is a receive function and extroverted intuition is a put function, it makes sense that those two are complementary. Now, SI is also a receive function and NE is a put function, and those two are complementary in a different way, which is to say one has to be subsumed by the other. So extroverted intuition and introverted intuition need each other to exist. Extroverted intuition, introverted sensing, one has to serve the other. So it's like, for me, extroverted intuition is dominant. So introverted sensing is fourth, which doesn't mean it's not present. It means it's continually present as part of my extroverted intuition serving it. In other words, I know answers that have happened before to refer to, and ideas that I've had before to refer to answer this question. So I'm going to pull those up and I'm going to extrovertedly intuit, which is to say, I don't have exactly the answer memorized. That would be a full blast SI kind of approach, right? Instead, I've got the nubs of it retained and I sort of rebuild it on the fly with extroverted intuition. Yeah, that's obviously not CS Joseph. It's one of the various people who like to come and play games of some sort. So the point being, I guess, that the reason people's type doesn't change is because attention habits, attentional manners, are habits of being. My whole life has been one of taking an ideational approach foremost and everything else feeding into that. So, for example, in this context, I'm struggling a little bit because there's other prompts in the chat that I'm having to not look at so I can retain my SI frame of reference, which is to say I'm answering this one particular question. I want to finish answering it before I address some other things. But in general, you could think of extroverted intuition as making a mess and introverted sensing as cleaning it up, or extroverted intuition is writing books and introverted intuition is organizing them. So if you're an introverted sensing is organizing them. Sorry. If you're an introverted sensing Dom, you are mostly concerned with how your existing resources, be they physical or metaphysical, are accessible to you, organized, and useful to you. Now, if you're an SI-DOM, largely those resources are going to be physical. So if you ask an SI-DOM where their MIA is, they know exactly where it is. Whereas if you ask an NE-DOM, it's a little more hit and miss, for sure, you know. But it's really a frame of reference. So we're talking about an introverted sensor being a person whose frame of reference is keeping track of what they already have, already know, already have gotten attained, or whatever. Introverted intuitors are not like that. They're assuming that the way the world is and sort of the universalities of things is how one knows, because it's front stack conscious, you know.
I wonder if maybe one time we can, when we Zoom with Kat, maybe interview her, since she's an actual example of an ISFJ that we can actually talk to.
Yeah, sure. That'd be cool. I wouldn't mind interviewing Kat. That'd be fun.
Cool.
So C.S. Joseph, this person who claims to be C.S. Joseph, probably almost certainly is not C.S. Joseph, obviously. But one reason why it potentially could be C.S. Joseph is because if we analyze the communication, we'll see gotta mark another point for extroverted sensing. It's a claim that references a purported justification, but doesn't actually state it anywhere. And then there's what you described as inferior introverted intuition. Again, a claim, no justification. And I expect an NE-DOM to be more creative with his content. Well, you know, that's a claim that doesn't need any justification because his own expectations are subjective data, but it therefore isn't meaningful as a claim either. So the fact that there's not any meaningful justifications following the claims is consistent with C.S. Joseph, but in the way that they're doing it is mostly consistent with Cloud. I mean, if it really is C.S. Joseph, he's not said anything yet, right? He's made a couple of claims. He said, there's another point for extroverted sensing. Well, what's another point for extroverted sensing? He didn't say what it was. He said, what you described as introverted intuition in the fourth slot. Okay, well, if in fact I described introverted intuition in the fourth slot, then what aspect of what I described does not apply to other slots? And you say I'm very concrete. Again, a claim with no justification. So what do you mean by concrete? Because I want things to be definitionally binary, that's consistent with introverted thinking. Keeping in mind that I taught logic. I've taught conditional logic. I've taught critical thinking. And I am a professional in rhetoric and sort of basically logic. So, but the thing is, whether or not that person is C.S. Joseph, because they're not providing any justifications for things, just claims, and they aren't interested in parsing. So, for example, I asked the question, what do you mean by concrete here? So it's like, typically what people mean by concrete is something related to the physical world, like digging a hole or surfing or something like that. I spend all my time saying words, but I guess C.S. Joseph would say that I'm being concrete because I want clear yes, no answers, binary answers to things. That would suggest either TI 7th or possibly 5th. 5th would make sense as well, I guess. ESTJ would make sense here. NI-polar, C.S. Joseph is either NI-polar or TI-polar. He consistently approaches things through a TE frame of reference. Like when you ask, he likes questions like, what should an ISTP do or something? Whereas I tend to resist those kind of questions because to me, it's like, I'm not there to give people advice. It's presumptuous of me to do so. especially if they're not ENTPs, because it's hard to give people good advice when you're not their type. ESTJ is probably the best answer for CS Joseph, yeah. Because, I mean, he certainly has been successful in creating an engagement with the YouTube community that's profitable and successful for him. So, within his own frame of reference, that's all he needs to do. As an executor, ESTJs, they don't really do bigger frame of reference, you know what I'm saying? Well, I mean, I just don't see the introverted intuition. He's got, and CS Joseph has absolutely no clarity regarding what's determinate in something and why it's determinate, what's relevant, So Leaf Charmer, good test, and as we were able to confirm that it's Cloud, not CS Joseph. Okay. I knew that as soon as he came in. Cloud never fooled me, but yeah.
Oh, did he just get outed?
Yeah, it's not CS Joseph. Look, CS Joseph wouldn't I mean, he's not interested enough in the truth to come argue with me. I mean, it could be David Sanderson, sure. It doesn't necessarily have to be Cloud, but if it's David Sanderson, it could be David Sanderson because David Sanderson would know certain cues that I'm able to pick up on that I don't necessarily state out loud as to why I think somebody's Cloud. Certain habits, He may be able to imitate those habits. When I say I think someone's Cloud, I have reasons that are not stated a lot of times because I don't want to give away all my cues that I pick up on. But David Sanderson could probably fake it. If anybody could fake Cloud, could fake being a fake Cloud, fake Cloud being fake, it would probably be David Sanderson. No, Sanderson didn't get banned. I don't have any problem with David Sanderson. I just got pissed off at him one night. When a person says concrete in the CS Joseph system, they are saying in the moment, frame of mind, and lacking in metaphysical concept. I mean, what comprises a metaphysical concept then? It's so strange because, of course, we are in the moment in some sense, but there's a complete failure to distinguish between real-time processes like experiential stuff like goose pimples and feeling cold or feeling warm or whatever, or emotions in the moment or anything like that, and stuff that's turn-based, right? Like language-based stuff. So if language-based stuff can qualify as being concrete, in other words, to real time, then there's no meaningful distinction being made. I'm not sure if he's that ignorant of the truth. I think it has more to do with the fact that this is more of a psychology issue and not so much a philosophical one, since Carl Jung has the experience. Boom. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Oliver Lionhan. He's not an ESFP. You're right. And he might, and he's not an ENFP either. He's got to be ESTJ. How old am I? I'm 49. Is Spite Monkey an age? Because if so, I know how old you are. Metaphysical concept is a theoretical idea or future focus and attitude. It's the imaginary before the real world. Okay, well, so basically, words that are not about stuff in the world, right? So words about other words, words about extrapolations, you know. Yep, exactly. Well, I think the whatever spite monkey this is, whichever specific spite monkey, they have though I did not want it, they have forcibly leased to me an immense amount of their headspace. So it's like at some point they should realize this, right? They should realize that Eric is occupying way too much of my headspace. But I don't know. I guess I'm pretty compelling. What am I talking about? Oh, a new species of monkeys called spite monkeys. Trolls always get what they want. That's definitely not true. David Sanderson, I banned somebody last night and they called me from a restricted number and I didn't answer the phone. I'm sure they went to bed very, very angry at me. As lots of people do, you know. Like that guy who called me and threatened to come to my house the other day.
Really?
Yeah. Well, he's from Maryland. I mean, it's like.
Why did he do that? Why do you say that?
He was somebody I shut down in the chat.
Oh.
I think. I assume. I don't know.
I'm sure you did.
I don't know who it was. I don't care. I don't even remember who it was that I banned. That's how not important these people are to me. I didn't say you were a troll. Did I, ENFJ? Did I say you were a troll? No, I'm not worried about any of these fucking retards. I'm not worried about them at all. To get me requires you commit a physical act of violence against me. I will not be intimidated by anybody, period. I haven't read it either. Greetings, wisdom, if it's any consolation. I don't plan to defend myself with physical violence. I plan to avoid physical violence. And if somebody imposes it upon me beyond the extent to which I can prevent it, then I will defend myself to the extent that I'm able to. But I would prefer to avoid that as well. That's why the state has a monopoly on use of force, so that I don't have to be big and strong to worry about my safety, or carry a handgun to worry about my safety. That's the difference between a civil society and an uncivil society. I'm going to presume that I can continue to enjoy the benefits of a civil society. And if somebody wants to violate my rights in a criminal fashion, then they will incur the consequences.
Just so you know, the burritos are good now.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Well, how did you know Queen's Gambit was a troll, ENFJ? Troll, purportedly you're new here, right? Coming over where? Oh, I mean here. I see. Because Lijo's here. Hi, Lijo. Can you believe it? Lijo, can you fucking believe it? I can't believe it. You're the big YouTuber coming over to my channel, my little channel. That's how people perceive it. I mean, to the extent, because everybody else perceives it like that, I guess hereafter, probably I'll perceive it like that now too. But I mean, the thing is, if because I don't update people very often in my memory. From my memory, Elijah has this little tiny channel and had some back and forth with me at some point about something. I just so it's like, and then but everybody else goes like, wow, she's here. It shows you how much I fail constantly. It's like every single person I can think of who's done anything with cognitive functions started after me, except for Frank James, started around the same time. But and just is vastly more successful than me. It's really, if I were subject to being depressed by that, I'd find it depressing. I instead find it completely understandable, frankly. I find it completely understandable. It makes perfect sense. Because those people are doing videos about a subject. Like you're supposed to. Whereas my title of this video is you should treat your claims like trash. Nothing to do with cognitive functions at all. And cheers, Ledjo. Here's looking at you, kid. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. You bring a little celebrity buzz to the place. I appreciate that. We can get all the big YouTubers to come to this live stream one day. Then who knows? If we start dancing, maybe the other cool kids will start dancing.
Yeah.
Claims are like assholes. Poop come out of them. They're between your butt cheeks. I don't think either of those things is true. Well, thanks, emailed Anthrax. I knew if I was going to make some self-deprecating humor, I'd get some reassuring pats on the back. That's how this whole operation works. Oh, yeah, DSP did start before me. That's true. DSP started before me. Your live streams are just me getting overwhelmed by questions and losing your voice. It's a nice problem to have. Oh, that's good to know, Leaf Trimmer.
All these trimmers.
Let me get one of these burritos. Burrito con carne. This is actually con chicken con queso.
You taste the chicken con queso?
Mm-hmm. That's good. It reminds me of flavor.
It does, right?
Mm-hmm. This has the flavor of a majestic wind blowing down from icy mountains. Now, they should have a game called Substantiate That Claim. It's the same as Name That Tune. You're like, I can substantiate that claim in 3 warrants. Oh yeah, well I can substantiate it with 2 warrants. Substantiate that claim. Why does C.S. Joseph have a problem with NI-DOMs? Because it's NI-polar. C.S. Joseph created C.S. Joseph himself. Never heard of him, never will. Hilarious. Yeah, well, I just see us Joseph Bowler. She just goes right over her head. Every time he crosses her plane of vision, she just sees a blur. No, you're dumb. You're dumb, David Sanderson. Not claims. You're dumb. You see how I burned David Sanderson there? I just burned the living shit out of him.
Yeah, you did.
Somebody get David Sanderson some aloe. Well, Silver, that would suggest that substantiation is a spectrum, not a binary, right? That with more substantiation, it becomes more substantiated. My position is it's a binary on-off. That something is either substantiated or not. And so, therefore, being able to do it in fewer steps means you've accomplished the same thing as somebody who does it in more steps. But I like your participation here a lot. Silver is somebody who says very interesting things. You were just from like yesterday. It was your first time here or something. Just, huh?
Yeah, I remember you from yesterday.
Note this, Silver. I don't remember people very well or comment upon them much. You know, got to go later. Oh, I was afraid you were going to have to go now. Greetings, wisdom. So you have Joseph typed Justin Bieber as an ISTP. Did he really? I mean, claims don't need warrants in your world. Well, as long as I don't ever have to visit your world, we should be fine. Nobody can substantiate a claim in 0 steps all of their right hand. The other type to me is ESTP. I mean, it's kind of an insult to all the actual ESTPs out there, you know? I'm so totally not an ESTP.
No way. No way. No how.
It'd be cool if Carl Jung were still alive and competing against us with his own cognitive function theory.
I mean,
I'd be slamming his ass.
Yeah. But he probably would respect you. If he is an INFJ like they say, he'll.
Yeah, he and I might actually work together. He and I could probably work together.
He's gonna cry over the fact that you like tore shit up, and then he's gonna come back and be like, you know what? You were right. Let's work together.
X equals X is a self-substantiated 0-step argument. It's not an argument. And besides, you weren't asked to substantiate your claim with arguments, but with warrants. Speaking of ESTP, you convinced me to watch Cobra Kai. It was worth it, but I admit I skipped a bunch of the crap scenes. I mean, I've enjoyed every minute of it pretty much. In fact, you just reminded me we have the last episode still to watch.
I can't believe that! Oh my god.
We saved it.
There's so much going on right now. It's gonna...
Your warrant is just another claim then, David Sanderson. It's not a warrant. Well, you need to show the link between your warrant and your claim. So, for example, if C.S. Joseph's right about cognitive functions because I'm evil, then you need to establish the mechanism by which evil causes him to be correct. High treble. A warrant is a reason why your claim creates the impact. An impact is distinct from a warrant only insofar as, an impact is distinct from a claim only insofar as it's contextualized within a discursive frame, like a debate or a disputed point or something. I'll be right back. I gotta feed this cat. Hold on. Once I feed the cat, I'll give you a more thorough answer to that. Can I get damn plates? All right, here you go, Trouble.
Is Pee out there?
I don't see her. So, for example.
No. Oh, here she is.
If you have a... Well, the thing is, Joe, my position on it is that FI 7 slot is actually an absolute value. It's just an absolute value that manifests only in the moment. Anyway, so regarding claims, warrants, and impacts. So, for example, let's say we were talking about a resolution that said the United States should eliminate the capital gains tax. Okay. Now, that's the point being discussed, or the resolution. Now, below there, you've got framework, which is definitional constraints or ground arguments. What comprises legitimate ground in talking about this or impacting under this resolution? So, then now, ground arguments will also have warrants and claims, so to speak, but they have what you might call meta impacts, which is to say they're rules that cascade down. They're not impacts in and of themselves under any framework. So then when you get down to the case level, you've got people making claims such as, yes, the United States should get rid of the capital gains tax because it will cause money to move around more in the economy, which produces more general economic prosperity or something. Now, if I'm going to make that argument, then I'm going to say my claim is that I'd probably phrase it as something like resolves that in the status quo, people's behavior with investments is determined by taxes. So, in other words, people are very much determined hold on to things until they feel ready to pay the taxes on it. So, or to avoid paying the taxes in certain circumstances. The thing is, if I'm going to make that argument, then my initial claim is going to be that basically it would be a block. So I'd say the top of the block would be that it frees up money into the economy that's currently trapped in investments. In other words, it causes people to divest and reinvest in something else more frequently. and that's a good thing. So then I need to establish a few different points there as warrants. The first thing I need to establish is that, in fact, in the status quo, tax regulations cause money to stay locked up longer than it otherwise would. And I'd establish that, I could establish it simply with basic reasoning or logic that as soon as taxes become a consideration, then that affects people's decision making. You know, people who who could cash out now and make amount of money on it, knowing that they're gonna have to pay $10,000 in taxes, well, they may wait for an opportunity in which they have some other tax exemption that will afford them to pay total less taxes than choosing to take profit, as they say in investment, when the opportunity most naturally presents itself. So the point here is that the claim and the impact are kind of the same at the case level, in that you're claiming that it's going to free up money, but then the warrant is going to be, it liberates mechanical factors in the system that cause people to keep their money in one place that exist in the status quo. And that then the impact is going to be the claim measured more precisely under terms of the framework or in terms of measurable impacts. So you usually measure impacts in terms of lives or dollars, quality of life, sanctity of life, or you measure it in terms of some kind of binary framework, that it's what they're suggesting that we do is unprincipled, so we ought not do it regardless of its positive impacts.
I'm going to take a shower up your time.
I mean, I have argued, I do that with my students a lot. You know, I tried not to generally. I don't like having my kids run arguments I don't agree with, but I do it sometimes anyway, and fairly often. So there's some topics that simply you can't take over the neg ground entirely. So some example topics that we've done that I've had my students arguing stuff that I don't agree with recently. All right, so the most recent topic was job guarantee, federal job guarantee. The United States federal government should provide a job guarantee. Now, I wholly oppose this notion, okay? So, but my kids still had to argue in favor of it anyway. What I did is I half sidestepped the issue. I had them advocate something else that I also oppose, or had him. This was just one kid, really, but that I oppose less. But regardless, but most importantly, that was something other people weren't going to think of. So what I had him do was run as his AF a labor standard monetary policy. And I have a card cut that says specifically, it's a really squirrely card cut. It's so that's a neg response to RF. Let me look at RF. There's a card that explains the labor standard, and the way I have it cut makes it sound like it's a job guarantee, but it's not actually a job guarantee. But the other person would have to be really well informed to know that. So like that kind of shit I do all the time, you know. Is it evil or wrong because I'm arguing bullshit? No. It's a sport. It's just a sport. So this case, for example, says, first of all, the existing law already requires that the Federal Reserve promote stable prices and maximum employment. Now, in reality, this is ridiculous because, of course, you cannot prioritize both of those things concurrently without the expense of the other. It's like saying it's to make both ends of the teeter-totter be up. It's like it makes no sense at all, right? And so Hamilton B, this card. We still need workers. Technology won't render workers unnecessary. So this is to prove inherency, right? That in fact we do have a need for more work to be done. So we won't just be giving people meaningless busy work. Hamilton 2017 G. FJG solves an existing and pressing need for infrastructure improvement. This card assumes all kinds of bullshit, right? It's like it assumes that we're going to be able to hire people who can do the infrastructure work. It assumes that in addition to finding all the funds for this federal job guarantee to pay all these people, we're going to also find the funds for all the materials and know-how and special equipment required to do all the infrastructure work. And it guarantees the workers a job without guaranteeing the funding for to pay for the work that they need the worker that they're guaranteeing the jobs to. So it makes no sense at all, right? The Council of Economic Report Advisors links poverty to unemployment. And so this is an attempt to say that, yeah, come on in, Dad. An attempt to say that it says it's Rachel's birthday tomorrow. That's why she keeps getting packages. Thank you.
That's heavy.
Okay, I got it. Thanks. Oh, cool.
Old Fifi's out here just checking out old trouble. He's down here in the bushes.
Yeah, he stopped by to visit. Yeah, he stopped by to visit. And then from Mark 2018 C, which says the Council of Economic Advisors report links poverty to unemployment, and the actual quote of it is 52 years ago, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared his war on poverty. On the 50th anniversary of his declaration, the Council of Economic Advisors issued a progress report. The conclusion was that far too many Americans still experience poverty because of unemployment. That's how I have it cut. It says in part because of unemployment, inequality, wage stagnation, and a declining minimum wage. But I have it cut to read still experience poverty because of unemployment. It's a legal cut. It's a legal cut. It's squirrely, but it's legal the way I cut it. The thing is, you can have you can't have internal ellipses, but you don't have to highlight and read the part that you don't ellipsize. So you can ellipses it verbally as long as you don't ellipses it on the card itself. So you can see here, I left the parts in that I didn't want them to read. Oh, you can't see. Here, I'll share this with everybody. Sorry. You can't see what I'm looking at. Silly Eric. So, like, this case is all bullshit. Okay, there's nothing legit in this. It's all me doing smoke and mirrors because I'm having to argue the wrong side. And when you argue the wrong side, that's what ends up happening. This is why I'm so good at recognizing smoke and mirrors. Is because when I'm on the wrong side of an issue, I have to use smoke and mirrors to get my kids to win. I have to learn to use bullshit arguments, you know?
I think the light might be out. The hot water.
Oh, okay.
So just do your thing. I can wait.
Okay. And so it's like when I say, like, remember, my motivation is to use the best arguments I can for any given position. And when I'm telling you a case is full of bullshit, it's because the outside of that resolution usually is bullshit. It's like we should not affirm this thing. It's a terrible idea. So, like if you look at the case here, would you be able to critique this case successfully as a good thinking person? Of course. Would a lot of poor thinking people be very convinced by it? Probably. Even though it doesn't do anything really, as far as I'm concerned. I would go, oh, this fucker is a big faker. I would be furious at this if somebody presented these as an actual case, like in society, in the media or whatever, in favor of a federal job guarantee. It would make me absolutely fucking livid. Who is this from?
My mom.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
So many presents. Look at all the presents Rachel got in this box.
Really nice.
I'm really doing a shitty job for her birthday, apparently.
No,
It's tomorrow, so I haven't done a shitty job yet.
You're fine. The fact that we're able to celebrate together is nice.
So you see, a lot of these cards are comparisons between a UBI and a federal jobs guarantee. So it'll say all the reasons why a federal jobs guarantee is better than a UBI, but I'll just take out all the parts that reference better than a UBI, so it just makes it sound like an FJG is a good idea.
Well, tomorrow.
And then what I do here on page, 4, FJG is on balance beneficial regarding climate change. The thing is, this is a spike, basically. It's anticipating the argument that a federal job guarantee that produces a lot of carbon by increasing the amount of work being done using machinery. And so it's a way to mitigate the anticipated counter argument that the neg's going to make, that the neg wins on climate change, because climate change is the biggest scale of impact. Now, that shouldn't be a winning argument. And if the debaters are good, it won't be. But it sometimes is anyway. So better to spike it out and gain some offense here. By claiming a little bit of offense is a good way to mitigate the anticipated strong offense on the other side. They wash each other out is fine, because they go like, look, I'm making a perfectly reasonable claim here. They're making a very extreme claim. Mine just says it's going to be somewhat beneficial. This is done calculated by people who are being objective about the matter. He's pushing a clear agenda here, this thing, you know? So that's why these things are very strategic for the sport. All these things that I'm doing here. They're not strategic for the truth. You know, FGG solves for structural inequalities. A federal job guarantee, what it says is a federal job guarantee is a sounder mechanism than UBI, but I cut it as FJG is a mechanism to combat structural inequalities, for instance, through closing the persistent unemployment gap experienced by stigmatized groups who face continued discrimination. So basically it says that, note, since 1972, unemployment has reached average double digits for Black workers and has never fallen below 7%, a level that is only reached during times of economic crisis for white workers. So it's saying, since this is a structural inequality, we can solve it immediately with a federal job guarantee, since unemployment will be equal for all races. So this is a I mean, it's just such a ridiculous argument. It's like saying, well, since there are too many Black people in prison, let's put more white people in prison, or let's let all the Black people out of prison. It doesn't work like that, for God's sakes, you know? You can't force equality of outcome according to your arbitrary metrics on everybody by eliminating by eliminating actual need for you from the equation of hiring people to do work. It's completely insane. But I mean, the thing is, if they had a federal jobs guarantee, here's one thing I would guarantee: any work done by somebody who had been hired by that program would be very poorly done. After all, these are the people that have so little desirability in the marketplace, presumably, because until COVID, unemployment was 3% or something. So this was a COVID era resolution because it's saying, well, post-COVID, we're going to have big unemployment problems. Maybe we can use unemployment as a frame of reference to force through X, Y, Z, B, D, A social agenda shit, you know? So do I argue against things do I argue in favor of things I don't believe in? Yes, and in totally skeevy ways. Okay, so Legends Fall is saying simply use a rights-based framework. The thing is, what you got to remember, Legends Fall, is on framework, you can make that argument. And if you win both that argument and your framework, you will win under your framework. And if you win the prefer my framework argument, you will win the round. But on the other hand, your opponent has concurrently impacted their own case, both under the utilitarian framework and under your rights framework, muddying it, saying, actually, we have a net benefit to rights. And then now you have to play defense and explain why this utilitarian benefit to rights is not actually upholding rights, but is instead a squirrely semantic way of getting around the fact that you're violating rights. While you're doing that, meanwhile, they're still impacting under their utilitarian framework, and they're telling the judge why to prefer their utilitarian framework. And let's say the frameworks are a wash. Then it's going to be who impacted more offense under their own framework, and that's going to be the other guy. There are very specific topics that are conducive to using that kind of rights-based framework and winning under it, and I've done it plenty of times. I'm a big believer in rights frameworks. But this topic is not one of them. I mean, and the thing is, of course, it doesn't require initiation of force unless you consider spending taxpayer money initiation of force. If you want to say, yeah, but that assumes you have to go get more taxpayer money, well, that's not a new violation of rights. That's ongoing. Now, you might say, well, then articulate how you're going to pay for this with the existing revenues. And that would be critiquing the funding plan. But this isn't a plan. It's LD. It's whole resolution. So there's very little round room for funding arguments. Well, I mean, the thing is, it works the same way that any debate works, which is to say, if you were to have an argument with somebody over the federal jobs guarantee and they were to argue better than you, what they would do is not give up at the sight of a rights framework and say, well, we just agree to disagree. They would say, I actually impact better under his framework than he does. Here's how I better protect rights than he does. No matter how much bullshit it is, you can come up with lots of muddying ways to assert that. And that's the same in life as it is in any debate round. No, David Sampson is not dialectic evolution. What is the topic tonight? Well, the topic tonight has actually turned out to be a rather topical video because it's about claims. And I say we should treat our claims like trash, which is to say we should separate them. into different contexts. So just like we wouldn't want to put a, I've thought that on multiple occasions before too, David Sanderson. If we want to make a claim, is this claim okay this kind of claim okay to make? Well, you don't know until you separate it into the kinds of claims that they are and the context. So, what is required to substantiate a claim about your personal preference? Nothing. So when fake C.S. Joseph here was here earlier saying, I expect blah, 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 blah. Well, that's a claim that I have no means to dispute because I don't know what somebody else expects. I can't dispute their claim about their own expectations, but I can point out that it's not any sort of claim about me, it's a claim about their expectations. So that requires no substantiation. You can just make the claim, and it says that the only substantiation it would require is if I ask you, are you lying? That you would say no. I'm not arguing with C.S. Joseph. If somebody pretending to be C.S. Joseph, it wasn't C.S. Joseph. The point is, the thing I was using that particular claim as an example. So there's an example of a claim that happened during today's live stream that is a claim that requires no substantiation at all. I expect that you will blah. I don't know what you expect better than you do. The only person who could possibly tell me if that claim is correct or not is the person who's making it in that instance, because it's entirely made of subjective data that's only accessible to the subject. Now, on the other hand, if you're claiming that, Eric, you should take a couple of Tylenol because that will make your head feel better, then you made two claims. You've made a prescriptive claim, you should take a couple of Tylenol, and you provided me the warrant for that prescriptive claim, namely a predictive claim, that it will make your head feel better. So the thing is, that requires a different kind of substantiation than, say, a normative claim or a descriptive claim. My argument was that because the frame is always shifting, the strength of a given argument also changes accordingly. Also, you cannot actually quantify the strength of an argument. Right. Well, arguments aren't really exactly strong or weak. They are substantiated or unsubstantiated. And then after that, they are standing or not standing. So, in other words, we all make this mistake of imagining arguments existing outside of any context, including me. And I talk in that metaphor a lot and say, well, these are the arguments about me, as though they exist out there in space somewhere. The reality is, of course, that arguments always occur in a context. And so in that context, a claim made by a person can either be substantiated or not substantiated. How well substantiated it is will be determined by how easy it is to break apart the substantiation. So that's why I say things don't have strength, but there is a rhetorical slope. Well, you say the judge determines the winner based on their own intuitive assessment of who won rather than a points-based analysis. I mean, then that's how chess is determined as well. Our own intuition about who won rather than a points-based system, right? Because the criterion for winning a debate round is the same for winning chess. You attain the most impacts under the most meaningful frame, insofar as you tip the binary balance from one side of the equation to the other. It is true that there aren't very many good debate judges, or debate judges good enough to correctly parse out all the argumentation of a given round, but it's almost never necessary to. So the thing is, what the mistake you're making, David Sanderson, is in thinking that we have to understand these things in terms of a sliding scale, that there is necessarily a spectrum. They're not a spectrum. Again, it's 4 simple statuses: substantiated, unsubstantiated, standing or not standing. So when we realize that, then it's easy enough to determine whether a response what kind of response it is. There are a finite number of kinds of responses. You can directly counter, which is to say, that's not true. You can mitigate, which is to say, it's true but not important, or as important as you say it is. You can impact turn, which is to say, your impacts are true, but they're actually a good thing. You can link turn, which is to say, your warrant is correct, but it produces the opposite impacts that you say it does. You can impact it under either framework. You can critique it on logic. You can do a source indict. I mean, you can argue ground, say it's irrelevant, not topical. There's a finite number of ways you can respond to something. And the question is whether any of those given finite ways of responding to something attains its own burden for effectively doing what you're intending it to do. So, in other words, if I want to use the tool called double bind, I have to successfully observe an instance where a team has double bound themselves, or an opponent has double bound themselves, which is to say, in one instance, they've said, we can't get apples unless we put these missiles here. And in another instance, they've said, we can't get missiles unless there are apples there. If they've done that in the debate round, or some version of that, you can use the tool called double bind, which eliminates both arguments from the flow. This is not an intuition thing. It's a reality thing. Well, so in other words, what makes an argument substantiated? In the instance of a double bind, it would be you'd be able to point to 2 specific instances that do actually double bind the other party, right? So if it actually is a double bind, then the argument's substantiated if you say it's a double bind. If you don't call it out, it's not your argument, right? So it's like if I double bind myself in the course of doing my business, but the other debater doesn't notice, doesn't call me out on it, the judge is not supposed to notice it and vote on it, right? They're supposed to only vote on arguments made in the round. Well, sure. I mean, all successful linguistic communication is predicated on introverted thinking. So that is to say that words have distinct meanings and can be rendered into binaries instead of spectrums. So that is, in fact, how it is. I mean, yes, you're right. Everything's predicated on logic, but that just establishes validity. What debate does is allow us to organize our understandings of validity into meaningful articulations of what deserves the status of true in the context. Yeah. So the idea being that that there's, you can make any claim you want, and some of them fall apart instantly, and some of them are very robust. And you're saying, well, because of that fact, it's really just the intuition of the person. But it's not, though. It's implicit to the nature of language. And no, I still type him as ESTJ. I originally typed him as ENTJ. I have for quite some time now typed him as ESTJ. But, a long time ago, I typed my dad as ENTJ before I realized he was an ESTJ. That was back in time when I misunderstood how intuition is and stuff. I think too many people are using type in an insulting context. That kind of behavior is inappropriate. Well, it's one of the biggest challenges in typology, frankly, because what typology empowers you to do are two contradictory things. One, it empowers you to understand, tolerate, and accept the differences in others as being implicit to a different kind of being. Number two, it gives you legitimate groups. So almost all groupist shit is bullshit, right? If you self-identify as Asian, I can conclude very little about you. It's not imposing my own sort of ontological imperialism on you. But if I know you're an INTP, I can assume a lot about you and be very correct consistently. That makes it a double-edged sword, right? So all of a sudden we go from a world in which there functionally aren't any groups that you can fairly confer identity onto other people via. Certainly not race or gender or any of the things that people freak out about. And now all of a sudden there is something you can legitimately confer meaning on other people with. So, when I see a certain particular manifestation of what I would call dumbness, it's going to be hard for me not to notice if it's very consistent with the dumbnesses of other ESFPs and say, here's another ESFP. Here I'm CI polar again, Is that bad or dangerous? Kinda, yeah. It kind of goes with the territory, though. It's like, what if we were to actually figure out why people are different from each other and how they're different from each other and really actually understand them? Well, then we'd be able to say a lot about their identity and ontology that, currently we can't make meaningful claims about and defend them. But with cognitive functions, once it's established as a proper sort of lexicon of comprehension, say a tool, which is say a discursive tool, right? A set of words or a set of ideas that allow you to interpret things through those frames and meaningfully explain stuff. So I don't want to be guilty of the legitimate but ugly side of typology groupism. Legitimate because, unlike those other kind of groupisms, you are not presuming to know things about the person that you don't actually know. You do actually know what you're saying about them. If we can successfully type somebody as, well, given that regardless of whatever you want to, what names you want to use, it is the case that over the course of the many years I spent typing now, or many hours and people have typed, that there are multiple instances of basically the same person who is, almost aggressively wrong in multiple contexts in ways that are very similar to each other, who do not know each other at all. whatever that type is, right? It's going to get a name because it represents an actual group of people that are actually the same as each other because they attend via the same configuration of cognitive functions. They still have differences between them because of particularist reasons. And I can't think of any particularly good context in which you should use your knowledge of cognitive functions to, I guess, well, I mean, I can think of plenty of good contexts too, though. It's a tricky question. It's a tricky normative question. It's like, it's a really easy teleological question. You know, understanding and knowing how people are. If I were out in the world, for example, in a public space, and I encountered an ESFP, and they started like chirping at me or something, I could literally say, I can make some predictions about you, and we'll see if they're true. You want to play? It's like, that's kind of magic to be able to know things about people that is because you can tell what type they are. Now, granted, I don't think many people have the ability that I have to be correct about typing the people that I type out in the world. Because the thing is, I don't really think about somebody's type that I encounter out in the world unless something about their type screams at me, I'm a blah, blah, blah. And I go, that lady was such a man. But it doesn't mean I go around typing everybody I encounter. It just means that I'm not sure how repeatable this trick is by other people, but I'm quite confident that I could like do mentalist shit based on cognitive functions. I'd have to try. I have to put together some sort of set of means of like, wowing, but yeah, well, you know how like mentalists are like people who typically what they do is they do a lot of suggestion stuff and other stuff to wow people by being able to read their minds or how did you know I was going to choose number 7? That kind of shit.
Yeah.
And typically they attribute it to their knowledge of psychology. In reality, those people's tactics only work on some of the people that they encounter, and their primary skill is in limiting the people they work with to those people, those on whom it works. I'd be much more effective in the sense that I individuate by type if I could determine a person's type. Now, the thing is, I typically don't, or I haven't really tested this, but I don't think that I could make a snap judgment about somebody's type in the first couple of minutes and typically be right. I suspect I'd typically be off by an I or an E or, something else. So I don't think I could actually do this without being able to sort of type all the people involved at some length ahead of time. But in theory, if I got faster at it so that my instincts were better and more reliable, it would seem to be something that would be it's a kind of proof of cognitive functions. The other thing is intertype relations are kind of proof of cognitive functions. In that when you show like how, INTP plus ESFJ, you've got TI1, FE1, TI4, FE4. And then, so they're both metaphysical types. And then you've got NE2 and SI2. So their 2 3s are flipped. In other words, tool function of one is a tertiary of the other. That's what they call duality in socionics. But you'll note that when we do duality with me, ENTP and ISFJ, we've got an SI dom and an NE dom. She's physical, I'm metaphysical. And that's the corollary. But it's not really hilarious. Is that a word? Hilarious? Hilarious is a hilarious word if it is a word. So Vincent Mascat says ESFJs and INTPs are not compatible. I actually think they are quite compatible. I really do. I'm not sure they end up together very often because the INTP doesn't understand themselves well enough to recognize how much they want that person. But they really do. INTPs need a lot of affirmation. And, you know, I think INTPs are probably the most prone to feelings of worthlessness because they don't do very much. They can point to as, no, I mean, they want affirmation about their TI, not affirmation through TI. They don't want another, yes, it will make an INTP happy if an ENTP goes, that's really good TI, or that's wow, that's smart, that's good, you're really good at blah, blah. That'll make them happy. But what makes them happier ultimately is being the only one who can solve the problem. Now, this happens with ESFJs as their partners because ESFJs need their TI and are willing to take it because unlike ENTP TI, INTP TI doesn't have to come with NI. Email Anthrax says, Eric, INFJs are the most prone to worthlessness. Feelings of worthlessness. My take on this is INFJs are the most prone to feelings of uselessness, whereas INTPs are the most prone to feelings of worthlessness. ENFJs don't feel worthless. ENFJs feel selfless. Like, where am I though? Mm-hmm. They're kind of in this mist of the absence of self. If we were gonna do a S word for all of them, how they feel when they're feeling really blue, you start with ENTP feels excluded. INTP feels worthless. INFJ feels useless. I guess it would be by the polar, right? So if we just do it by the polar, then ISTP and INTP would have different ones, but INFP would have the same. But see, that doesn't make sense for INFP. So there must be 16 different ones. INFP's fear would be I guess being unloved. What's their polar? SE. Oh, being too weak to do something important, maybe?
Yeah. They beat themselves up for not making it to a job interview and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's a funny question. If an INTP adopted tools and methodologies for self-discovery and introspection, then could they not establish a firmer sense of self-identity? Meditation and journaling, for instance? It's not a lack of... It's not that... The thing that makes that comment funny is what you're lacking is not ideas and words about the self. That's what you have way too many of. What you're lacking is the physicality of realizing your agency in terms of impacts in the world. FI polars are maybe not good enough, inferior.
Well, what struck Delilah was that when your dad said that she didn't care about the
Right.
family.
Yeah, that really bothered Delilah a lot. Not feeling strong or confident enough equals INTP SE polar. I found the shadow of a specific type is very negative to the self and can cause the type to view things in a negative light. So you're saying I think this is true of 6 especially. 7, you're subject to attack in various ways, but it's really with 6. It's like when reality is forcing you to use your 6 a lot, you are not a happy person. And if you think about it, this ties back to the ESFP around here question. They're forced to use their 6th slot. Why? Because they come in and they see what's happening here as chunks of intuition. They'll throw out their 4th slot intuition, which is whatever idea they read most recently on Easily Fooled magazine. So they throw that out there first. You critique it with TI, and then they have to decide on an FE position. Then are they going to defer to your hierarchical superiority or challenge it? And they don't understand things in terms of critiquing the ideas independently of the people. But do ENTPs think they are stupid a lot? I don't anymore. It took me a while to think I was smart. I didn't believe it for a long time. For a long time, I assumed that when people claimed they didn't understand me, or that it was just assembling. It was just a way to avoid answering what I was saying. And I assumed everybody else was a lot smarter than they were. And I've always been able to recognize my limits in the sense that I've always been quick to see how, but that's what the really hard shit is. I can't do that. I'm not that smart. It's like early on I realized there's another kind of smart out there that's another level above me. It does shit like quantum physics and calculus and stuff. Yeah, what I learned is not necessarily that I'm smart, but that everybody else is really dumb. That's funny. Oliver Linehan, I believe you write for Easily Fooled magazine. He says here that he reads that blocking his nose for the purpose of CO2 retention. He manages also to retain mucus. And I'm glad to hear he's managed to collect all his old baby teeth and reinsert them. Because retaining everything that's ever been on your body, in your body, is critically important to your health. If you knew about IQ, you wouldn't have been as confused about understanding people. Well, no, I would have been more confused. I would have been way more confused. Because, I would have dismissed IQ as meaningful a long time ago. If people walked around with their IQ score over their head, so I could link my perceptions about their intelligence to a number, I would have dismissed that number as meaningful a long, long time ago.
That's good, because like I see that in an anime world where there's like your IQ score over your head, and I'd be the girl crying on the edge of a water fountain because I have a low IQ and no one comes up to me.
I mean, the thing is, there's no reason to believe that the definition of IQ that's established by a pattern of IQ scores is better than my definition of intelligent. Because EQ is validated by nothing but itself. No, I'm saying, I guess I misunderstood what you were saying, Cedric Beachy. What I read your initial comment as meaning, if you knew everyone's IQ back then, things would have made a lot more sense. And I'm saying, no, if I knew everyone's IQ, things would have made a lot less sense. Because I've had people come in here and tell me they've got IQ scores of whatever, and I may keep it to myself, but I think to myself, wow, that's a high scoring cretin. You know? I trust my own judgment about what comprises actual intelligence more than the IQ test, which fails to even like address its own framing issues. It's like if you're gonna do a test like that, make an effort to mitigate the framing issues somewhat. We've watched all of it except for the last episode, Hambone.
Oh, Cobra Kai?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't link intelligence to making a lot of money either. Farmable hot. So that's not something I would mistake for intelligence. But for example, if everybody walked around with an IQ score over their head, I'm quite confident that ISTPs would walk around with high scores over their heads. Yet I would not consider them intelligent until maybe after I talked to them for a long ass time. Even then, I probably wouldn't consider them intelligent. Because why? I'm their supervisor type. I'm an expert in intuition DOM, TI tool. To me, they've only got half of the equipment needed to be smart.
I swear to God, they're gonna make an anime out of that. Everyone walking around with their IQ over their head. That sounds so anime.
No, well, Cedric Beachy, what I'm saying is, as I interpreted your initial statement, which was, and I may have misinterpreted it, but what I thought you meant when you said if you had understood IQ back then was that if you had known everybody's IQ score. Now, that was probably a silly leap on my part. I think the reason I made that leap is because the implication is that, because the question was about whether I thought I was smart or not, right? And you said, well, you probably would have been less confused if you understood IQ. So I sort of thought to myself, well, what would have made me, in theory, less confused? Well, if I knew everyone's score, in theory, that would have made me less confused. But in reality, it would have made me more confused because of the reasons I articulated. So it's not me inherently having a problem with the IQ frame. It's me having a problem with it's what I would call analysts who forgot to consult the meta-analysts. There's in such a way that it would be hard for you to then see it out in the wild when trying to type someone, for instance. Let me see what the beginning part. I think there's a beginning part of that. I suppose the more generalizable question is it ever the case that adopting a tool system, practice, etc., can compensate for enough for polar function? No, but I think externals can make your polar irrelevant. So in other words, I had the idea before of making a video. In fact, I may have actually done it. I think I may have actually made this title for a live stream. It says, why Japanese INTPs are the most successful. Why Japanese INTPs are the most successful? It's not because they're doing anything different. It's because their culture is pressuring them a lot more. And what INTPs need most is what they want least. Someone constantly telling them what to do. You know? So what about FI polar? FI polar is kind of you're vulnerable because of and if the people around you take advantage of that vulnerability. So I was really well loved and well raised, and my parents didn't make me pay for being FI polar. If your growing up environment makes you pay for your polar, then you're going to have to worry about it. You're going to have to try to find some kind of workaround. If your environment either accommodates your polar, adjusts for it for you in some fashion, or doesn't punish it or whatever, then it's not really a problem. So for INTP, then saying like, well, I'll just never require anything of you from that area is not an acceptable thing because their polar's SE. For FI polar, well, I'll just never require anything from you in that area is much more plausible. So in other words, people are less likely to get mad at you because you didn't value something as precious enough than they are to get mad at you because you didn't complete a task. It's like in Japan, you really get the sense that the individual it's made almost impossible for the individual to pursue their own course of action to the extent that it violates prescribed expectations of the society. And yeah, I plan to start dressing up pretty soon here. I am starting a presidential run in next month, so I've got a lot of sort of things going on in the works or whatever. Part of the problem is that right now I'm not feeling really super great. Rachel and I are both a little bit sick. We're getting over being sick, and plus I'm having some dental problems, which I think are kind of course I'm running. David Sanderson. Well, I've been saying this for quite a long time now. And, it's like things are weighing heavy on me right now, in part because of that, in part because I'm not feeling physically very well. No, Dave Sanderson, I've actually been saying I was running for president for probably over 2 years now. I don't mention it every day. After I decided that I wasn't going to be able to run in 2020 because of circumstances linked to my mother and her failing health and my need to assist my dad in caring for her when she was still living here. I made the decision that I wasn't going to run for 2020. I just couldn't do it. I had to be there for my dad. And at that point, I said I was running in 2024. And I've never changed my tune once. I've never backstepped from this claim at all. So why would you be surprised? Yeah, what I need is some not carbon dioxide, hydrogen peroxide, some carbon dioxide. I can make plenty of carbon dioxide myself.
Oh no, we ran out.
Yeah, we did. Possibly Cedric Beachy. If you can see, look, the subcategories are more meaningful. You know, the more precise you get in the thing you're measuring, the more meaningful the measurement becomes. So if I'm measuring your conditional logic skills, that's more meaningful than if I'm measuring your verbal reasoning skills. Verbal reasoning skills is a slightly larger set of things. So, it's better to try to get down to the core, one single core skill that doesn't break down into anything else, right? It's sort of the atomic cognitive process of the thing. We can find that with TI easy enough, and we can show what that is, because it literally is the grammar and logic of our language. So it's very easy to point to and talk about because that's what it is, you know. But with something like introverted sensing, when we try to get down to what's the core cognitive process, and you say it's memory, that's wrong. That's not what it is. It's something else that's difficult to describe, and it's best described as something through the frame of how it impacts values. In other words, it's best described operationally. Many different types that aren't TI polar can reach a no-FAP conclusion, for example. Well, I agree with you that many different types can reach a no-FAP conclusion, but...
No-FAP conclusion?
Yeah. Well, he's saying that, like, you know, but it's kind of a good example. You know, we can only know so much about conclusions. We can know a lot more about reasons.
I love you. I'm gonna take a nap.
Good night. I love you too, my darling. Don't forget to eat plenty of Cheezo.
Thank you. I probably will get it as a snack.
That's a good idea. David Sanderson, it totally depends, right? So if you're no-fapping on the grounds that, well, for example, I said in the live stream the other day, I'm more or less no-fap normatively in my current state of being because I'm in a relationship, and I think my significant other has sort of first claim on my semen, you know? If I had any complaints, if I had any difficulty accessing her for sexual intercourse or something, if she was only sometimes down, well, then that would be a different frame of reference. But that's not the case. So in general, even when I'm done watching anime for the evening, and typically, you know, sure enough, not all of them, but many, if not most of them, end up having scantily clad anime girls running around half the time. I think before going to bed, you know, maybe I should open up an incognito browser, because it's like an episode of Simpsons when he says, "Marge, I've been watching women's volleyball," except in the analogy, Marge is asleep. So he says, "Pornhub, I've been watching women's volleyball." So I would not say, Leaf Drummer, that objectively it's a vice. That statement is silly. Objectively, it's a vice. How is it objectively a vice? If you're going to justify it with God stuff, then that's magical thinking frame stuff, which is what he said in the first place. Well, no, you tell me why. Well, why is it objectively advice? How is it objectively advice? In other words, describe to me the objective process you executed to determine its advice. Okay, so which process did you use? What did you start with? What process did you use to get to from where you started, where you ended up? Okay, so there's a warrant right there. If you don't control it, it hijacks your dopamine system. So that's like saying nobody should drink any alcohol because if you're an alcoholic, it hijacks your system. But I agree, alcoholics shouldn't drink alcohol. It doesn't mean everybody shouldn't drink alcohol or nobody should ever drink alcohol. So, like, that's a legitimate reason to talk about fapping potentially being a problem, because it's one of those things that is pleasure inducing. It's something that people can get addicty about potentially. I mean, in fact, but the thing is, look, Dave Sampson, I think you're missing the point. Okay, well, I don't understand why masturbating is more natural than eating or drinking something that intoxicates you. But regardless, even if it is more natural, that's just a naturalistic fallacy. So the thing is, for those people who are very physical in their frame of reference, especially, or very experiential in their frame of reference, experiential pleasure things pose a risk for abuse. Now, the thing is, though, just because something poses a risk for abuse doesn't mean it's always some degree of bad. So if you look at alcohol consumption, people who consume alcohol successfully and incorporate it successfully into their life, it's not a bad thing for them. It's, in fact, it's a good thing for them. They like it. They think it's a good thing. They don't have a problem with it. They have a glass of wine, helps them loosen up and chat with their friends, and then they go home and whatever, you know. Okay. Well, how about this then? How about sleeping? Let's say you want to sleep 20 hours a day. People are going to say something wrong with you, right? You're depressed, or that you're addicted to sleep. Is that a better corollary? I think you're being a little persnickety about the legitimacy of the analogy just because it's natural or not. The thing I'm queuing on is the same for both. Namely, it's pleasure inducing / and or dopamine producing. So, Hambone says, masturbation is the only thing keeping the incel menace at bay. Well said, sir. Well said. So the thing is, to the extent that masturbation becomes a vice for somebody, it is because they have a problem with their, manager-firefighter relationship. The idea being that everybody has temporal bargaining arrangements with themselves, things that they reward themselves with, and things that they do that they find laborious. You disagree with what? I mean, I didn't say anything that was incorrect. Nothing to disagree with. Okay, well, David Sanderson, the good thing is I can neither substantiate nor refute people. So we don't need to worry about the people. And that's the current problem in the world, is that everyone's worried about the people in this group, right? But the problem is right now we have an individual making arguments in favor of NoFap. And I've asked for some legitimate reason why he's claimed that it's objectively a vice. Now, that other person gave a reason that could, in fact, be used in that kind of an argument. It wouldn't substantiate the claim that it's a vice, but is relevant, certainly. Namely, the management of one's own dopamine, or the management of one's own addictions and behavioral problems, basically. So, well, the thing is, it's not that he's not allowed to disagree. It's not possible for him to disagree if he doesn't know what he disagrees with. You know? You don't disagree, you disagree with the statement, yeah. Who's they? Who's they, though? It's like, I'm not sure what he disagreed with. Normally, if you disagree, if you say, I disagree, I think back and I go, okay, this was the weak statement I made. Maybe he must disagree with that. I couldn't think of anything I said that was even really disagree withable, you know? I don't think I made any particularly big claims. No, I didn't agree with Hambone. I said it was well said. A nice turn of phrase. It was funny. I don't agree with him. I don't think that the incels are a barbarian horde kept at bay by their masturbation. Obviously. I just thought it was funny and well said, you know? He used language well. Yeah, do you know what his mom said when they hauled him off to jail? Bison. Who is this about? Is it about a bison? Okay, well, my point is, you disagree with the message of it. I'm pointing to it being aesthetically successful. Those are different things we're talking about. Aesthetically, it is successful. It was funny. It is funny. It's a clever turn of phrase. It's a funny kind of image, you know, a bunch of incels at the gates of Rome with the dicks in their hands. You know. I mean, I can tell you one of the symptoms of NoFap is talking about masturbation a whole lot. You know, I noticed that people who do FAP don't talk about masturbation very often. So my thought is that retaining semen causes you to talk about masturbation. There must be a causal link there. Semen retention. Does the church have a tithe on that? I didn't know that. Does the Catholic Church want 1/10 of my sperm? Here you go. I heard you guys are taking tithes of this stuff, right? Here you go. I want to give my 10%. That's 40 gallons of cum. Well, I mean, the other 360 gallons are my wife. Well, what am I going to do? Dude, from the start, I said I'm arguing besides religious stance. And I said, I know you are. So what's your non-religious objective reason to call it a vice? That's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of, that question. What is the reason? I guess that's possible too, Silver. I'm pretty sure that's a correlation, not a causation. It's more likely that the case that those that ascribe to NoFap as a philosophy seek to spread it than semen retention. Wow, that is a compelling alternate explanation, I must say. All right, that makes a little bit more sense. What did Diddy do? Diddy had 40 gallons of man seed at his party? Oh, Diddy didn't do that. Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you heard about the Dew family. There are 3 members of the Dew family: Bob Dew, Susie Dew, and Christine Dew. They're all dentists. They work at a dentist office called Dew Dentist. And I am hereby officially recommending to them that their saying be, nobody does dentistry like the Dews do dentistry. All 3 Dews. I mean, maybe there's more than 3 people in the family, but all 3 people who work there are Dews, you know. I hope that eventually a 4th and 5th Dew join the dentistry firm. It's I don't know, it's just like I love it when you go out in the world and there's some funny sign like that. Like, what, are you serious? The 3 Dews in their dentist office? I hope you're talking about my daughter. I hope you're talking about my daughter. She is hot. I'm kind of proud of that because I myself, you know, going into having a child, you would not predict that I'd have an attractive child. You'd predict that I would not particularly have an attractive daughter. But I do. And I've always felt kind of proud of that. In fact, do you know, I shit you not, this is true, that my daughter made the top 75, the final 75 cut for the Rose Court to be the Rose Princess or the Rose Queen, you know, which is pretty good because it started with over 2,000 people, and she got into the top 75. And I feel proud of that. I don't know why. It's just because it's so weird. It's like, I'm not from an attractive family, right? I was never received as attractive in my youth. I was not one of the cool kids. I confused people. I got a little bit of bullying, not that much really. People didn't really know what to do with me, I think. I didn't know what to do with me. Oh yeah, I mean, I love having her over and having her around. The thing is about having Delilah over here is, it's really the only context where I can be on TWFP and genuinely relax in terms of feeling responsible for much. She can really handle the driver's seat, like for a fairly extended period of time, maintaining a certain amount of interestingness, provided there's enough going on in the live chat for her to answer. Unlike me, she doesn't go on endless tangents about everything, right? She's looking at the next thing in the live chat to answer. But it's the same basic strategy as me in dealing with live streaming, which is she's responding to the chat. It's just she's much more efficient at it than I am. So it's like she could do this at twice as many people or 3 times as many people, probably more successfully than she could do it right now. I could probably do what I do less successfully with 4 times as many people, 3 times as many. If it gets over 70 people or something, she starts going fast in the chat, Have I gotten there before? Yeah, I have. But that's about the highest I've ever had. Okay, well, so Leaf Trimmer defines nofap as don't ever fap and only do the real thing with the girls. There's no girl, don't fap. So my point is, as a relationship partner, I feel like the case can be made that it's a vice for me to masturbate because I have a finite number of loads and I'm 49, so it's like my sex drive is still fairly high, I suspect, for my age, but it's not like I need to hump every day or something. So as a consequence, if I choose to masturbate, then that means the next day Rachel and I are going to have sex probably, and maybe not the day after that. I don't know. Maybe the day after that. Who knows? But within a couple of days probably, if she's not on her period. But it's like we have sex infrequently enough that if I regularly masturbated, we'd have sex less frequently than I think is healthy in a relationship. Is it a choice though? Well, I don't think it's morally prohibited for me to masturbate. So I don't think that I'm committing a sin, but I would say that in my instance, I perceive not masturbating as a positive moral indication rather than masturbating as a negative moral prohibition. And I think that it's specific to my circumstances. So when single, I believe I made the mistake of not masturbating enough for about a year after my second wife. I tried dating for a little while. I did date for a little while, successfully bedded this chick, and then was like, okay, that is too much fucking work. And then I sort of just went into shut off sex mode for the next year or so, and I rarely masturbated during that whole time, and it was not good for my prostate. I didn't have a prostate problem prior to that year, and I did afterwards. Now, that's not proof that the things are linked, but with SI shit about my own body, all I really got to go on is my gut, and my gut says that they are linked. So, of course, I'm sure there are other things that link as well, such as I think if you hold your poop, then your prostate enlarges more than if you don't hold your poop in. I'm a poop holder, or I have been historically from early childhood. I always try to put off pooping until the last second. I think that's not been good for my prostate. But of course, this is just Eric's random intuition. These are not claims I can substantiate, okay? But nevertheless, the thing is, I've still yet to hear from Leaf Trimmer and a reason why it's objectively a vice, which is what his claim was. Someone tried to bully me when I was in middle school. He gave up pretty quickly, probably because I refused to give him a reaction. Good decision. If he continued, it would not have ended well for him. What is brain power? I don't know. Electricity? A combination of chemical and electrical interactions? Why are you and your father having conversations about masturbation? Oh, well, it's fine running Fox. David Sanderson is, that's, as far as, I mean, that's the sort of thing that I wouldn't have even noticed if you hadn't pointed it out. It's mild compared to most of the shit I hear that I think of as being attacky, Okay, well, semen retention may not be nofap, but it is the inevitable consequence of nofap, right? It's like carbon dioxide retention and no breathe are not the same thing. True, no breathe causes carbon dioxide retention. It's a fun topic. It is a fun topic, though. I shouldn't play the topic card. I shouldn't play the topic card, Leaf Trimmer, because it is a fun topic. It's an interesting topic. I think that for most young men with a moderate to high sex drive, nofap would have unintended consequences, including but not limited to being more inclined to sleeping around, existing in a permanent, persistent state of anger, staying in or beginning a really bad relationship because they are hot, or other sex drive driven mistakes. Okay, but I still don't hear any reason why it's a vice. Your maker made you the way you are for a reason. My maker made me the way that I am for a reason. What was the reason? Knowing that my maker made me for a reason doesn't really do me any good. I need to know the reason, or one of several reasons at least. Rachel's not an SFJ, Winston's mom. I don't expect her to do shit like that for me. So, but I don't understand, Lee Trimmer. Why is it that ejaculating in sex with a woman doesn't cause the same problems that ejaculating when you fap causes? So, if in fact, your father was made strong and vigorous by his lack of fapping, why did he not become weak and flaccid once he had sexual intercourse with a woman? Expectorating onto or into a woman? I prefer to pontificate on a woman or expositionalize. I endured another one of Eric's expositions tonight. David Sanderson, why did you time out Ethan McDonald? Hi.
I brought out some hydrogen peroxide for you.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
How nice of you. Oh, it's full.
Yeah.
Wow, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess that was an accident, Ethan. Sorry. Our bad. His bad, really. But since, I made him a mod, I guess it's kind of my bad, too. I am, indeed, cunning in my wordplay. I see. So Shaggy D Kale makes a good and important point here. He's saying that the classification has to be made here that fapping itself doesn't cause neurochemical imbalances as much as high-speed internet porn or something that raises that dopamine rapidly and keeps it up. Okay, well, so implicit in here is the idea that looking at porn is bad, not the masturbating is bad. And whether or not looking at porn is bad, that's a separate question, because I don't always use pornography when I masturbate. Sometimes, probably maybe a third of the time, I just use my imagination. I've got a wonderful imagination. The thing is, leaf trimmer, but I described the same phenomenon, right? And my feelings about how I was after that year of more or less no fapping was like I had a prostate problem. I didn't feel anything else besides that at all. I suspect that there's certainly a good amount of placebo effect to be gained for people who believe in it enough, do I think more on words or pictures? Words. Basically, like when even in my that kind of stuff, it's a lot of talking There's a lot of talking. Sexual intercourse with Eric is kind of like attending a speech. I usually begin with 7 years ago. I work my way down to I have a dream. I have a dream. I see. Well, leaf trimmer, then perhaps fapping has nothing to do with it at all. Any of the effects that we attribute to it, yours or mine. The placebo effect is the ESFP of science. Is a better way to put that, I think. The placebo effect is the ESFP of science. Yeah, that's possible, true, Hambone. I mean, the thing is, of course, for me, there's this clear sort of thing that I either turn on or turn off, depending on where I am in life. So if I'm looking for a girlfriend, I turn on sexual attention. And if I have a girlfriend, or I'm not looking for a girlfriend, then I turn it off. And if I have a girlfriend, I turn off sexual attention, such that what ends up happening is it kind of takes me by surprise every couple of days. Like, it'll be sitting here and then Rachel will walk in front of me and her tits will be right here. And all of a sudden I'll realize, oh, I'm horny. But I still have sexual attention turned off, more or less. I'm not thinking about sex stuff at all, or chicks or whatever, and then if I were, back when I was single and not looking for a chick, same thing. I just turned off sex attention. Sometimes I would be compelled by external factors to remember it, and then I'd usually fap, but it wouldn't happen very often. It would usually happen when I'd see some, like, one of those ads at the bottom of one of those pages that says, like, 33 vintage photos that that shocked and amazed you, and then and then they got like this picture of this chick that's got like a thin shirt on, and you can kind of see her nips through it, going like, and you go to click on it, and you click and click, and you don't even see any good pictures of that chick anywhere yet, and then you're just like, okay, fuck it. You close that, you open up incognito one, and you go, okay, maybe you can start with the same search thing, like vintage boobs or something like that. And then before you know it, you're masturbating. But the thing is, my key thoughts about masturbation are, I don't want it to take a long time. That's kind of the number one thing. And I also don't want it to be a dud. So a dud meaning where it's like, you're just like, oh, that wasn't even a good orgasm, really. So those two things kind of run afoul of each other, because typically if you don't want it to be a dud, then it takes a longer time for more build up. So it's more of a release. But I hate wasting time masturbating. It just seems like a waste of time. It's like after I'm done with it, I always feel like gagging, because it's like, at least if I was watching porn, because whatever I was watching now suddenly has gone from, yeah, fuck her, to, ew. Okay, well, that might be the case, Lee Trimmer, that people who fab often take longer to climax. That makes sense, assuming. Well, I mean, I'm not sure that makes sense or not. It's like, takes longer would have to be compared against people climaxing an equivalent number of times, an equivalent time distance from each other, for it to be whatever. I don't really value IQ because I think it marginalizes people. I mean, the problem is everybody gets marginalized, you know? Everybody gets marginalized. You get marginalized if you're not smart enough. You get marginalized if you're too smart. You get marginalized if you're perfectly the right amount smart. Because aren't you so perfect, right? You get marginalized no matter what you are or do because of the nature of cognitive functions and human endeavor, which is there are a lot of people with a lot of different values who don't understand why they have those values or that they are representative of their values. And they think they universalize things that shouldn't be universalized. They particularize things that shouldn't be particularized. And everyone's totally confused when dealing with each other because no one's really aware of what's going on. Two people with potentially conflicting frames, depending on their configural stacks, are interacting together, expressing their respective absolute and instrumental values. Sometimes those things are predicated on assumptions regarding where values are placed in other places, and it makes it like impossible to talk. Your IQ is somewhere around 113 to 117, you were told. You were told. I'm telling you how smart you are with this IQ score. A school psychologist? Well, I mean, that's as good as God himself coming down and talking to you, David Sanderson. And there's one thing that I know for sure, it's that school psychologists are excellent, excellent thinkers. Hi, Dad.
I'll get a flashlight. The pilot light's out.
Okay. I'll come. It's a good time to end the stream anyway. It's been a long stream. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go.